This true scary story has a massive trigger warning, and when I say massive, I mean the biggest trigger warning I have given you guys yet. This is also only for 18 years and older. If you cannot deal with DV or any type of V at all, then please scroll past this. And by the way, this is exactly why you should not play with Ouija boards. I also want to take this time to remind you to subscribe to mine. The link is in the bio. I tell stories on there that I do not tell on here every few days, so watch out for that. Also, if you want to send me your true scary story so I can recount it on here, my email is in my bio. It's kaisaspooky@gmail.com. Okay, let's get started. So this submitter's name was Sarah, and Sarah was born in the 80s in the state of Virginia. In the state of Virginia in the 80s, you are not allowed to go to daycare unless you were potty trained. And at the time, she was 6 weeks old, so she obviously was not potty trained yet. So her parents both worked, and so they had to find someone to take her in. Well, her mom's sister had a best friend named Gloria, and Gloria had a little daycare at her house, and she took care of kids, and she was highly recommended because she was really good to these kids. So that is where they decided to take Sarah. Now, Sarah was really well taken care of. Gloria was great to her. Every single time her parents picked her up, she was happy, healthy. She was just great. They loved her. The only weird thing that they thought about the situation is they didn't really like her husband, Tim. They said that he was a little off. He was a little quiet, quirky, but they thought that maybe he was just like quiet, just a quiet person. So they kind of ignored it. And they ended up getting really close to Gloria because Sarah's mom's sister was close to her. So those three couples started hanging out a lot. Sarah's parents, her aunt and uncle, and Gloria and Tim. So these three couples are hanging out a lot for about a month or two. And one day, Tim suggests that everybody plays with a Ouija board. And Sarah's mom at the time, who she told me had not found God yet, decided that, yeah, this would be a fun idea. Let's all do it. So they all started playing with the Ouija board. They did it about 2 or 3 times and nothing really happened until one day Gloria comes to Sarah's mom and she says to her, listen, something really weird is going on. Tim is playing with this Ouija board every single night all by himself. Like, he is sitting in our room alone playing with this Ouija board, and he's telling me that he's talking to some alien. And she says he also told me that the alien's name is Rodentalk. That is what the Ouija board has told him. And Rodentalk wants to show himself to Tim, and he wants to do it on top of a mountaintop. So they decide that they're going to go to this mountaintop so that Rodentalk can show himself to Tim, and the others want to see it as well. So they actually ask Sarah's mom if she can babysit all of the kids while they go and do this. So they go and they do this. They come back and they say nothing happened. Now, even though they didn't see anything that night, I believe that something did present itself. They just did not see it because this is the start of a nightmare. So although nothing presented itself, Tim is still obsessed with this Ouija board, and it's all he does every single day. He just sits in his room and he plays with the Ouija board by himself. One day, Sarah's mom goes to drop her off to Gloria's house so that she can get babysat. Gloria comes to the door, she opens the door, and she does not look well. And she says to Sarah's mom, listen, I am so sorry, but you are going to have to find a different babysitter because I have to get a job. At the time, she did not have a job, so she was at the house with Tim all day. Not sure what their situation was, but she didn't have a job. She said, I need to get my kids out of here. I need to get out of here. There is something very wrong with him. All he does all day long is sits in the corner and plays with this Ouija board, and it's starting to become alarming. So I'm very sorry, but I can't watch Sarah anymore. And although Sarah's mom is upset about this because she needs to find a new babysitter, she's also really concerned for her friend Gloria because they have now become close. Now, it's important to note that Tim and Gloria had 3 kids. They had 2 biological children, one 9-year-old son and one 5-year-old daughter. They also had a 7-year-old adopted son. So remember that. After Gloria tells Sarah's mom that she can't watch her anymore, Sarah's mom reaches out to her and is like, listen, are you okay? Like, is everything okay? Tell me what happened. Like, is there anything that I can do for you? And Gloria tells her something chilling. She tells Sarah's mom that one day she comes inside and she finds Tim in the corner facing the wall, shivering, crying, snot pouring out of his nose. He is absolutely petrified and whimpering like a child. And Gloria is like, what is wrong with you? What is going on? Like, are you good? Then looks over in the corner and there's just one shirt hanging up, just one random shirt. It's a red shirt and it's hanging up in the corner. She looks at the shirt, she looks at him, and she said, what is going on? And he goes, that shirt is possessed. That shirt is evil. At this point, Gloria is like, okay, we are done with this. You are done playing with the Ouija board. You are going to the doctor. You need to be put on medication. This is absolutely insane. So she takes him to the doctor, and of course, he refuses to be on medication. So fast forward later on, it's fall now, and Gloria gets a secretary job. And her secretary job is only during school hours, so while her kids are in school. And one day, she is at her job, and normally she takes her lunch break at the same time every single day. But a woman had come up to her and asked her if she could switch her, and she could take her lunch break 30 minutes earlier, and she could take hers 30 minutes later. So Gloria agrees. But while Gloria Gloria is gone, Tim calls the office and he says, you need to get home now. I brought the kids home from school. They aren't feeling well. Get home quickly. Well, she obviously wasn't there, and this was the 80s where no cell phones existed. So she didn't get the message until she got back to the office. So she's freaking out at this point, and she's like, oh my God, like, what's wrong with my kids? And she rushes home. And this is where I'm going to give you the trigger warning again. Please do not watch this if you are sensitive, because this is gruesome. What Gloria walked into, a mother should never, no one should ever have to experience this ever. Every single person in the house had been unalived, the children and Tim. I'm going to spare you the nitty-gritty details on here. I might do it on my YouTube. It's very hard to hear. It's hard to tell, honestly, but I'll give you some of them. Basically, a shiny object was used in order to first take the life of the youngest daughter. And the same thing with the two boys. The only thing is that the hearts were out. He took a bite out of all of the hearts. And the shirt that he was wearing, you guessed it, was the red shirt that was hanging up. Then did something to himself that a coroner saw and actually quit after 42 years of being a coroner because of this situation. He himself 6 times in the to put it in and take it out and then do that 6 times, that's not humanly possible. This is so heart-wrenching. They actually saw Gloria about 35 years later, and like Sarah and her mom did, at a McDonald's, and as soon as they saw her, she dropped to the ground, started crying. This is 30 years later, mind you, and screamed, "He took my babies! He took my babies!" That just almost made me cry. They actually had to take her to the hospital. They had to call an ambulance that day, and that was 35 years later. So this poor woman, I can't even fathom. I guess that also Sarah and her mom were driving like past houses one day, and Sarah had no idea what house it was, and she looked over at a house as they were driving past, and she looks at her mom and she goes, something is radiating off that house and it is not good. Like, that house is scary. And her mom goes, that's the house. That is the house that happened in. And she had no idea. Let me know what you guys think happened in the comments. Do you think that he was just mentally ill, or do you think that like something actually possessed him, that there's something seriously wrong with him? Because I don't know. Either way, this story was the worst story I've ever heard in my entire life. So I'm sorry if this was too much for you guys. You guys can always be honest with me and let me know in the comments. It will not hurt my feelings. I want to make sure that you guys feel safe watching my stories and comfortable. And if this was just too much, please let me know, and then I won't even put it, the longer version, on my. As always, you guys are so important to me. You mean the world to me. Thank you so much. Sarah will be reading these comments, so drop any comments that you want to ask her, any questions or anything like that. She will be reading them. Other than that, I hope you guys have an incredible night. I am so sorry if this ruined your night. Normally I say have a spooky night. Tonight I'm just gonna say a prayer for this woman, because she needs all the prayer she can get, even to this day, I am sure. I will also not be promoting anything in this video because it is not appropriate. So I love you guys. I will see you in the next one.
This is probably the scariest story I've ever read. If you're new here, hi. I usually talk about some pretty scary stuff, and recently I went an email where anyone who finds this page could send me their ghost stories. And let me tell you, I have not only been getting a lot of emails, I genuinely did not think that these were going to be as scary as they are. And just a little PSA, these stories are so scary that I've had to start reading them during the day. And this story is one of the reasons why. So let's get into it. This story comes from someone who would like to remain anonymous, and for obvious reasons, I'm going to respect that. So before we get into it, everyone in this story is ranged from 14 to like 17. And this happened a few months ago. So every other month, the person who sent me this email and his family go and travel 5 hours across country to go see his cousins on his dad's side. In this particular time, they decided to watch paranormal movies when they arrived. And after the movie was over, him, his cousins, and his brothers decided to make a DIY Ouija board. They took this board upstairs to like the main floor and started asking questions. Specifically, how many of us are in this room? And it answered correctly. They continued to ask pretty simple questions, and every single question was answered correctly. Then they asked, are you, and I'm not going to say the name of this thing because it freaks me out, but they ask, are you, and the planchette stopped. Then suddenly, their uncle burst through the front door and they slide the board underneath the coffee table and did not say goodbye. So the person who sent me this email, his two brothers sleep upstairs for the night, while him and his cousin sleep downstairs. And the next morning, his brothers rush downstairs and start claiming that they were hearing banging coming from the attic the previous night. And when they were questioned what it sounded like, his brothers started banging on the table, and the person who sent me this email said it was so loud we didn't believe them. The email also says that they were not allowed to check the attic because their uncle didn't want them to go up there. However, he states that it was like an attic out of the movies where they have a little cord and you pull it down and stairs fall. The next night, the person who sent me this email and his cousins decide to sleep upstairs and the brothers downstairs. So they just flip-flopped to see if they could hear what was going on the previous night. And they did. He woke up at exactly 3 a.m. to the loudest banging coming from the attic. He tried to wake up his cousins, but they were not waking up. He says that once the banging stopped, he had to go to the bathroom, so he got up and went to open the door, but the knob wasn't budging, almost like someone was on the other side holding the doorknob. And when he was able to open the door a little bit, he noticed something, and that was the hallway light wasn't on. And I guess in this house, the hallway light is always on, so the fact it was off immediately started raising red flags. And I guess you can see the door to the bathroom, and it was just slightly open, and it was just swaying back and forth. And at this point, the person who sent me this got scared and slammed the door shut, at which point it wakes the cousins up in the room. And when he explains what happened to him, they stay up until sunrise. And at the end of the email, he says that whenever he tells people this story, they think he's crazy. And all I gotta say is, I don't think you're crazy because I have had the same experiences. I also made a DIY Ouija board and did not say goodbye. And whatever was in the board was obviously not just secluded in the board, if you know what I mean. And I would hear the craziest things for months after. This is also why I tell people not to play with Ouija boards. But anyways, that's gonna do it for me. Stay tuned for more ghost stories.
This is probably the scariest Ouija board story time that I have ever come across. For obvious reasons, this person wants to remain anonymous, so for the sake of the story, let's call her Lucy. A few years ago, Lucy was living in Los Angeles. Her parents had just bought this brand new house. Soon after they moved into the home, they started to hear rumors of 5 teens who had played with the Ouija board and had mysteriously gone missing. Not long after they moved into this house, Lucy's parents went away for the weekend, leaving Lucy home alone until like Monday. Lucy decided to invite 5 of her friends to come over and play with the Ouija board because, I mean, why not? What could possibly go wrong? But they didn't want to play with just any Ouija board. They wanted to play with that specific Ouija board that the 5 teens who had gone missing had played with. Around town, they had heard rumors that that specific Ouija board had been buried in a house where no one ever went to anymore. So they decided to go to that specific house and dig in the backyard, and they actually came across the Ouija board. Even though the Ouija board was very worn down and faded, they were still able to use it. They decided to head over to Lucy's house since she was home alone. They set up the whole scenario. They lit up candles, they sat around it, and they started. At first, they were a bit skeptic because nothing was really happening. They decided to ask the board, is anyone there? And nothing happened. Just when they were about to just kind of give up on the board, the planchette moved to yes. They were thrilled, but like scared at the same time, decided to continue asking the board questions. They asked the board what their name was, and the board answered with the name Annie. Annie went ahead and let them know that she had actually died in the same home where Lucy was now living at. They asked her how she died, and Annie answered, fire. Once she started to talk to them, the air around them became extremely cold, and they could sense like the atmosphere had shifted. Feeling the weight of the room starting to weigh down on her, the candles that they had lit up started to flicker. Then they heard a loud bang on the wall. One of the friends ended up looking to the side, and they saw the silhouette of a woman standing there staring right at them. This really scared them, so they decided to say goodbye to the board so they can close out the session. But the minute they say goodbye, the board or the planchette started to move, saying the word no, 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 like it did not want to end the session. They then started to hear whispers like surrounding them throughout the whole room, saying the words help or help me. over and over again. Realizing that they had awakened something that they wanted absolutely nothing to do with, one of the friends grabbed a glass of water and poured it like over the board and started to yell, "Leave us alone." The whispers that they were hearing then turned into screams, and the planchette literally flew against the wall. This literally made the whole room erupt in complete chaos, and everybody got up and started running for their lives. The minute they left that room, the air felt completely light, and whatever presence was weighing down on them had disappeared. They decided to never speak of that night ever again, but the experience that happened that night haunted them, like till this day. Every single person that was in that room till this day still feels like Annie continues to watch them and stay like near them, still waiting for them to help her. A lot of them still claim to still hear faint cries in the middle of the night. They believe that they have opened something that they had absolutely no business opening, and till this day it remains open. Lucy's parents eventually ended up moving completely out of that state, but till this day, like, Lucy will still have nightmares about her experience.
A 16-year-old girl wanted to know if her boyfriend was cheating on her, so she bought a Ouija board. Yeah, you heard that right, and just so you know, this story gets crazier. So this girl brings the Ouija board home and plays with it by herself. The first question she asks the Ouija board is, "Do you want to play with me?" In which the Ouija board responds, yes. She said she had suspicions of her boyfriend cheating on her, and she wanted to know the truth, so she asked the Ouija board, "Is my boyfriend cheating on me?" To which the Ouija board replied, yes. She then asked the Ouija board, "Do you know if this girl has a phone number?" To which, of course, the Ouija board replied, yes. She asked the Ouija board if he can give her the girl's number, and it starts giving her a phone number, which she starts writing down on a piece of paper. So after writing down this phone number, she decides to ask the Ouija board if it knows the girl's name, and it gave her the name of Nayeli Ortiz. She immediately leaves the Ouija board, goes to get her phone, and call the number. When she calls, a man answers, and she asks if she can speak with Nayeli Ortiz. The man stays a little quiet, and he's like, yes, but what is this about? And the girl's like, "Oh, I'm just a friend. Can I just speak with her?" To which the man stays quiet on the phone again and says, "Well, here's the thing. There is a girl named Nayeli Ortiz here, but she's 2 years old, so how can she have a friend?" So after that, the girl's realizing that the Nayeli Ortiz the guy's talking about is 2 years old and not another 16-year-old girl. She apologizes and gets off the phone immediately. So she goes back to the Ouija board and asks why it would give her a name of a 2-year-old girl and not another 16-year-old girl that her boyfriend's cheating on her with. The Ouija board responds, "That little girl is going to die." In which she says, why? Why is she going to die? And the Ouija board spells out, "I'm going to take her." So at this point, the girl's like, "No, stop playing with me. You're scaring me," and decides to stop playing the Ouija board. So she stopped playing the Ouija board. The following day, she gets very curious and she still has the phone number. So she decides to call. So she calls the number, the same guy answers, and she asks to speak with Nayeli Ortiz. Except this time the guy cussed her out and told her how insensitive it is and how rude it is for her to be asking about his daughter when she had just died that morning. And he hung up on her. So after that, she just couldn't believe that happened. Like, the Ouija board said the girl was gonna die. The girl actually dies. And she just thinks it's a dream. Like, this couldn't have happened to her. So at this point, years have passed. And she's still in disbelief that this could have happened to her and the way it happened to her. So she gets curious again and she wants to go look for the phone number that's in her wallet so that she can call again and maybe get more information this time. Except for that phone number that's on a piece of paper is no longer in her wallet, and she could never find it again. At this point, she still had the Ouija board and she hid it under her bed, and she claims that every time they would clean or something, that Ouija board would reappear like in the middle of her bedroom, almost like it wanted her to play with it again. It got so bad that the dad ended up burning that Ouija board, and she mentions buying another one. She bought another one because she wanted to continue to play with it. I don't know, man. I feel like I would have just contacted one of my best friends, would have given me all that information I needed to know if my boyfriend was cheating on me or not. Also, she didn't even give us an update if her boyfriend was cheating on her or not. And that's how it ends, basically. I don't know. I don't know what to make of it because I feel like that shit is scary. And if anything, that happening would make me not want to play with the Ouija board again. By the way, this story was originally in Spanish, and it's in one of those podcasts where people can call in and tell them their scary story. So if I find the original creator, I will tag them in the caption, because I don't think where I saw it is the original person, like the original podcast people. But if I do find it, it'll be in the comments. But what the hell do you guys think about this story?
A group of 9-year-olds made their own Ouija board, and a couple weeks later, one of them woke up to someone sitting next to their bed. If you're new here, I'm Krista, and on my account, I tell spooky stories that were either submitted to me or found on the internet. Today's story comes from Sam. This happened a while ago. Everyone I've told says it was probably just a dream or that I'm remembering it wrong, but I still think about it all the time. When I was 9, my friends and I made a Ouija board out of a piece of wood and a marker we took from class. We used it during lunch by this old well behind our school. At first, it was just something dumb to do. None of us actually thought anything would happen. But then it started answering. And the part that still doesn't make sense to me is that we were all 9 years old. We weren't good at spelling. But when we wrote down what it was saying, everything was spelled correctly. I still have the notes, and looking back at them now, I know that it wasn't us. We kept using the Ouija board anyways, pretty much every day. And a couple of weeks later, I woke up in the middle of the night. I remember I had to go to the bathroom, but I didn't want to get out of bed because I was comfortable, so I just rolled over. And when I rolled over, there was a woman sitting right next to my pillow. She was really pale, with long black hair and a white dress. The only way I can describe her now is like something out of a horror movie, but at the time I'd never even seen one. I was pretty sheltered growing up. I just knew that she wasn't supposed to be there. So I shut my eyes again and reached out my hand. Whatever I touched, it was freezing cold, like freezing in a way that didn't feel normal. I didn't open my eyes again until morning. After that, things didn't happen all the time, but they didn't really stop either. I would hear my name being called when no one was there. My mom would hear me calling for her even when I wasn't home. When I was around 10, I started having the same nightmare over and over again. In it, I was home alone, running through the house. I'd go into the spare room and shut the door, but when I came back, it would be open again. I'd close it, walk away, come back, and it would be open. Over and over and over again, like I was stuck. And eventually, in the dream, I just know something was waiting for me in that room, almost like I wasn't getting out. Around the same time, I found out something about that house. When we moved in, we were told the stains in the carpet were from the previous owner being a painter. But when I was about 10 years old, I looked up our address. It took a while to find anything, but there had actually been a murder in the house, and it happened in that exact same spare room. I never saw the woman again after that night, not like that. But even now, I still hear things sometimes. Doors open on their own. And I still get that feeling like I'm being watched, especially at night. And I've never been able to shake the feeling that it all started with that Ouija board. This is so scary, and the fact that the ghost and the Ouija board and the spare room and the nightmares were all like intertwined in this story, like absolutely terrifies me. And I hope that at this point in time, this ghost or whatever entity is no longer attached to you. Thank you so much for submitting this story. If you guys have any stories you'd like me to read, please email them to me and I'll get to them if I can. And I will see you in the next one.
I need to tell you guys this ghost story. This story was sent into my email, and if you have any ghost stories, paranormal encounters, or scary stories that you want to share, you can send them to the email in my... I didn't think using a Ouija board app at 2 in the morning in the middle of France would even work, but something answered us. This is hands down the creepiest thing that has ever happened to me. I still don't like talking about it, but I just need to share. A few years ago, I went to France on a trip with my school. I don't know if it's all the history I already knew about where we were going to make me subconsciously scare myself, but as soon as I got there, it felt weird. The place where we stayed was extremely isolated. There was no nearby town, no houses, no bustle of the city. It was just a very old property surrounded by empty fields and trees. Soon after we arrived, all of the students were split up into their rooms. Each one held about 10 to 12 of us, but my group got lucky and only had 6. I was already feeling off about this place. It was secluded and old, and I had seen too many scary movies. Even the layout of the place scared me. There was a basketball court in the middle of the property, and surrounding the court were the rooms, 3 on one side, 3 on the other, but of course, the room my group was staying in was completely separated from everyone else. It sat behind the basketball court, and it was so far off that the closest building to us wasn't even another dorm. It was an abandoned church that sat on the property that had been left to nature. This thing looked ancient, small, rotted wood, moss growing up the sides. One of the stained glass windows near the top had been smashed open, and its shards of broken glass still clung to the frame like teeth. I couldn't look at it without feeling sick. I felt like something from inside of it was watching us for some reason, but of course, being teenagers, everyone else thought it was cool. That night, after we got back from exploring, everybody was bored. We were all at this point just sitting around talking, scrolling on our phones, trying to entertain ourselves. I'd always been into paranormal stuff, so jokingly, I suggested we download creepy apps and play some creepy games. I didn't expect anything. I wasn't even expecting for them to agree when I made the half-hearted suggestion in the first place, but they did. At first, I thought it was harmless. Charlie Charlie, ghost detector apps, and at first we were all laughing and having a great time with it. And while I was scrolling through apps to see which one would give us our next thrill, I found a Ouija board app. I know how stupid that sounds, but as I scrolled the reviews, I found myself terrified. People were claiming they heard voices, saw figures, had nightmares afterwards. I was spooked, but I still rolled my eyes a little at them. It's an app, after all, so I downloaded it. When you open the app, a page of rules pops up on the screen. Things like never use alone, never disrespect a spirit, always say goodbye. I glanced at it quickly and skipped straight through. We started asking it random questions, and at first the app seemed glitchy, and it kind of solidified my thoughts on it just being a very fake app. Every answer was random, nothing really lined up with our questions, and random names would come through unprompted. But pretty quickly, things started getting weird. It was late by this point. Everyone else on the property had gone quiet. The room had only one dim lamp, and on the outside, everything was pitch black, except for the outline of that church across from us. I asked the app one last question before we decided we'd shut it off. What's your name? The planchette slowly moved across the screen and spelled out Veronica. I froze. Just a few days before that trip, me and one of my friends had watched this horror movie called Veronica, about a girl using a Ouija board. Because of the coincidence, I remember saying, okay, that's a bit creepy, but I still wasn't convinced, so I kept going. That was the worst mistake I could have made. I asked, "Are you evil?" And the app answered, "Yes." Everybody in the room started yelling at me to stop messing around, but I laughed it off and asked one more question. "Prove that you're here." Tap, tap, tap. Something knocked on the door. Every person in the room went dead silence and slowly turned toward it, that thing that separated us from whatever was out there. One of my friends whispered, "Don't open it," but I had to. And standing on the other side was one of the property chickens. I sighed in relief because I quickly realized how dumb this all was. But it was just standing there, completely still, just staring at us. Also, it was the middle of the night. The chickens shouldn't be out, and not this far out at least. So I slowly shut the door, came back to my phone, and asked, "Are you outside?" It answered, "Yes." I slammed my phone down so hard I almost dropped it. And then suddenly the app started counting down. 10, 9, 8. The numbers appeared one after another across the screen, and everybody started panicking. What does that mean? Turn it off. But someone said, "No, wait, let's see what happens." So the countdown kept going. By the time it got to 5, the temperature in the room had gone completely cold. When it got to 2, I was about to close the app, when the entire screen started glitching violently. The planchette spun around in circles, and then my phone completely shut off. Dead. Wouldn't respond, wouldn't turn back on, nothing. At this point, we were genuinely terrified, so we decided to just go to sleep and deal with it in the morning. One of my friends asked if we could leave the bathroom light on because everyone was too scared to sleep in total darkness, so we did. I remember laying there, staring toward the bathroom while everybody else tried pretending that they weren't scared. And then, click. The bathroom light turned off. Every single person sat upright almost instantly. What was that? Who turned it off? But I had been staring directly at the bathroom. Nobody had moved. Nobody had gotten out of bed. The switch had flipped off by itself. I need to tell you guys this ghost story. This story was sent into my email, and if you have any ghost stories, paranormal encounters, or scary stories that you want to share, you can send them to the email in my bio. The room went completely silent after that. The next morning, I kept thinking about the app, so stupidly, I opened it again. This time, I actually read the rules. Never leave the session without dragging the planchette to goodbye. Failure to do so may result in unwanted encounters. I realized I had never ended the session properly. At that point, I deleted the app immediately, but the entire rest of the trip, I felt like something was wrong. I felt heavy, like something was attached to me. When it finally came time to leave, I glanced back at that old church that had freaked me out from the beginning. I swear I saw a figure standing in one of those broken windows. Eventually, I got home and tried to forget about everything, and for a while, life went back to normal. I was sitting in my bedroom late one night, scrolling on my phone. My bedroom door was open and the hallway light was on. Across from my room was the bathroom, and beside that were the stairs leading up to my room. That's where I heard them coming from. Large, heavy footsteps, slow, headed up those stairs toward me. I looked up casually at first, expecting it to be my mom or my sister, but standing there was a tall, black figure. It walked directly into the bathroom, and I shot up immediately and ran after it. But when I turned the corner to look, there was nothing there. But I noticed the bathtub beside the door was completely black. It was cloaked in shadow. And after that night, things got worse. I started hearing footsteps, whispers, hearing my name when nobody called me, waking up at exactly 3 a.m. over and over and over again. And then came the dream. I was trapped inside this abandoned house with a little boy beside me. Everything around us was destroyed. There were fallen shelves and giant wood crates, broken furniture blocking every hallway, and something was chasing us. To me, it looked like a large, distorted bear, and every time it caught us, the dream would restart again and again and again. Minutes started feeling like hours, hours felt like days, and I kept trying to wake myself up, but I couldn't. Eventually, I realized that the only way out was helping the little boy escape, so I kept running, over and over, until finally we found stairs. And at the top was a bathroom with a bedroom beside it, exactly like my own house. We hid behind the bathroom door while footsteps echoed through the hallway upstairs. The bear had turned into a man, and he was looking for us. Eventually, he walked away, so we ran. Suddenly, everything around us turned white, completely white, like we were standing inside light itself, and through the brightness, I saw two figures, a man and a woman. And then the little boy stepped forward between them and grabbed their hands. One by one, the shadows faded, and suddenly they looked human. In the dream, the boy turned back to me, smiled, and whispered, "Thank you." Then all three of them disappeared into the light, and I woke up. For whatever reason, after that, I felt different, lighter somehow. Still not alone exactly, but lighter. Even now, years later, weird things still happen sometimes. Footsteps, dreams, waking up at 3 a.m., and every once in a while, I think about that app and wonder if I've left a door open, I'll never be able to close.
This girl said that she played with a Ouija board and then she was haunted by a nun. This story is so terrifying. While I was reading it, I was like, what the hell is going on right now? So this girl's name is Courtney and she's from South Wales, United Kingdom, and she's 22 years old. So she said at this time she was really obsessed with the paranormal, very intrigued with it. And one of the reasons why is because unfortunately her mother had just passed away and she really wanted to contact her mother. It's important to note that Tiffany is very sensitive with energies, right? She's an empath, she's an intuitive. So her playing with the Ouija board wasn't a good idea in the first place, but again, she really wanted to talk to to her mom. So one day, her and her friends decide that they're going to play with this Ouija board. She says that they start playing with the Ouija board and she immediately starts to feel this massive amount of dread, just negative energy. And of course, nothing happens while they're playing the Ouija board, she said, but she said that it was afterwards that was the real issue. So after they're done playing with the Ouija board and they say goodbye, she for some reason feels like she has opened a portal in her living room. She doesn't really know why, but she thinks that she has. So she decides that she's going to take the board and she's going to snap it in half and throw it in the garbage. This was a huge mistake. After she throws the Ouija board away, she later on that night goes to sleep and she's laying in bed and she wakes up in the middle of the night and she hears something and she's like, what is that noise? And she hears like this soft whispering and it's going, Tiffany, Tiffany. Now, she didn't really tell me what she did about this. I'm assuming that she just ignored it because she said that after this happened, it first started with whispering, but then the nights following after that, it became more persistent and a little bit louder. So it was saying, Tiffany, Tiffany. Well, this goes on for a little bit, long enough to make her feel like she's gonna have a breakdown because nobody believes her and nobody is listening to her. Well, one day, one of her best friends comes over. They're having a sleepover and they're both just on their phones, chilling in her bed. They're talking when suddenly they hear this. And this scratching noise. And then she hears, Tiffany. So Tiffany looks at her friend and her friend looks at her and Tiffany looks at her and goes, did you hear that? Please tell me you heard that. Her friend's like, yeah, I heard that. Now, apparently her friend had had sleep paralysis quite often and had had experiences with spirits herself. So this didn't really bother her that much, but her friend did make her swap sides of the bed. She didn't want to sleep next to the wall because that's where they heard the scratching noise. So they swapped sides. Now, Tiffany said that at this point, things really did start to scare her because she didn't know how to protect herself and she was terrified. And she knew that spirits had fed off of fear, but she didn't know how to stop being scared. This is where things got even worse. Her head started to burn, like her scalp started to burn really bad. She said that it felt like there was a sunburn on her head and that hair started to fall out. Now, she said that this actually got so bad that it progressed to the point where she started to feel like she had a sunburn everywhere. She had it on her knees, her ankles, her elbows, everywhere she felt like she had a sunburn. She finally went and told her grandparents because she was so scared, and her grandparents took her to a church. So they go to the church and the church is closed. So they go to another church, that church is closed. They try all these churches and all the churches are closed. And so at this point she's feeling completely hopeless because she is sitting in the car, and as she is sitting in the car, her head is still burning and she can feel this thing touching her hair. And not only is it touching her hair, but it's like tugging on it. So she's feeling pretty hopeless at this point, and they decide that they're obviously going to go back home. They have no other choice. So she goes upstairs and she needs to wrap a towel around her head at this point because she is so sick of this thing touching her hair. So she goes to grab a charger and she wraps a towel around her head. Well, as she is walking towards her grandparents' room where she's going to sleep because she's not sleeping by herself, something grabs the towel and yanks it off of her head. She is hysterical at this point. So she runs down the stairs and she goes to talk to her nan and she's like, something is happening to me. I don't know what's happening to me. And her nan is like, listen, we're just going to pray for you. So they all start to pray together, right? But at this point, she is still burning hot. And then she starts to feel something on her leg and it's hurting. So she pulls up her pants, and right where she pulls up her pants on her right leg is 3 long scratch marks on her right leg. This is where it gets really bad, okay? So they get done praying and they all go to bed. So she's laying in bed and she is trying to fall asleep when she hears it again. Tiffany. Tiffany. Now, she's so scared at this point that she just grabs a pillow and she just puts it over her head. Now, mind you, she is sleeping next to her nan, right? So she's sleeping next to her nan. She has this pillow over her head when suddenly she feels something get on the bed and it slowly starts crawling on top of the bed. Then it crawls on top of her, over her, and then suddenly it just stops. And she's like, okay, I'm good. Maybe it left me alone. When 5 minutes later, her nan just shoots up and just goes, At this point, Tiffany realizes that the spirit had done something to make her grandmother cough. And if you can think of what the spirit did, I can't say it, but like what would you physically do to someone to make them like lose air, right? Now it gets into the scariest part because now is the part where she sees whatever this is that is haunting her. Her and her friends go to a hotel room one night. They decide that they're going to have a couple of drinks. Well, Tiffany at this point decides that she's going to go take a shower. Well, as she's in the shower, she's opening up the shower, right? And she gets in. She then hears Tiffany again. and she slowly turns around behind her for some reason. Nothing's there. So at this point, she's like, okay, I need to sit down. I need to calm down. I cannot deal with this anymore. I have to not panic. I have to not show fear. So she just sits down on the toilet, and where she's sitting on the toilet, she can see the reflection of the shower in the mirror, but she's not looking at the mirror yet. She's looking at the floor. She then slowly looks up into the mirror, and she sees a nun standing in the shower staring at her. Now, Tiffany legit feels fear through her entire body at this point, but she is like, I have to stop letting this thing scare me. I have to do something about this. So she takes up all the courage she can in her entire body, and she turns around and runs towards that shower. She whips it all the way open, and there's nothing there. She said at this point that fear kind of took over again, and so she just runs out of the bathroom. But as she's running out of the bathroom, she kind of glances in the mirror again, and there is the nun again, and it just goes, Tiffany. She said that that night she absolutely could not sleep, and that this scared her so badly. She says that she still deals with this to this day, that she still will hear her name being whispered constantly, and that she still will feel things crawling on top of her as she sleeps, and that she reads the Bible every single night. She reads Psalms 91 every single day. She wears a cross necklace every single day, and things have gotten a little bit better, but she still has sleepless nights, and she does not know what to do because she's absolutely terrified. By the way, her real name is Courtney, but I did not see that she didn't wish to be anonymous until the end of the story. Unfortunately, I don't know how I missed that part, but she doesn't wish to be anonymous. Her real name is Courtney. She said to let everybody know, do not play with the Ouija board. You never know what you could let in, and it's terrifying her, and it could terrify you for the rest of your life. So I am going to tag her below because she did say that she wanted to be tagged, and she also wants to know if you guys have any advice for her. What do you think this is? Because I do not think that was a nun. Obviously, we think we know what this is. Yeah, I can't say the word, but I think obviously we know what this is because this is pretty bad. This is a pretty bad haunting. I mean, you're going through a lot. You're getting physically touched. You're like, you know, I can't even say what's happening to you, but you know what's happening to you. I said it in the story. Not nice things. So not nice things are happening to you. I definitely think that this is what you think it is. And I think that you definitely need to seek professional help from a clergy or whatever your culture, I don't know what your culture is, but go seek a shaman, a clergy, something that can help you kind of work through this, or maybe even be exercised in some way. I don't know, I'm not a professional, I shouldn't be giving you that professional advice, but definitely something to help you because this sounds kind of unsafe. Drop all your opinions, suggestions, and comments below, but please, as always, be respectful because she is scared and this is something scary that's happening to her. I'm very quickly going to do the shout outs because I have like almost no time. STFU2896, you said that I was part of your morning routine, and I love that so much. Thank you so much for supporting me like that. Thank you for liking my videos enough to watch them that often. Thank you so much for being kind and leaving comments and pushing out my videos. I hope you know how much I truly appreciate you, and I wish that I could say more, but I'm running out of time. I love you, girl. Bree_Stevens20, you're so cute. You said that it's always a spooky time when you watch my videos and that you love watching my videos, and that means so much to me. Thank you so much, and I'm glad it's always a spooky time. I hope it's still a spooky time, even though I can't say or do anything. But I appreciate you so much. Thank you for being a part of my community. I wish I could say more. I love you, girl. I'm about to run out of time, and just thank you for being a huge supporter. I love all of you. Good night.
What would you do if your friend talked you into going to a cemetery at night with a Ouija board, and then they were never the same again? This is Scared with Jess, and today's story is about two friends who went to a cemetery, but only one of them left. This happened when I was in college. I had a friend who got really into paranormal stuff for a while. She always was talking about haunted places near campus, old roads outside of town, abandoned buildings, graveyards, anything like that. She loved all of it. Videos, stories, spirit boxes, even Ouija boards. I didn't take it seriously the way she did, but I ended up going with her sometimes because I tried to just make the most of everything. One Friday night, she texted me and asked if I wanted to drive out to an old cemetery outside of town because she had something good and wanted to try it there. I already knew what she meant. I asked if she was bringing the board, and she said yes. I should have said no. I didn't. I thought we'd sit there for a little while, get creeped out, and then leave. And that was honestly all I expected. We got there close to midnight. The cemetery was outside of town, past the last gas station, and down one of those roads that gets darker than you'd expect once you're off the highway. No lights out there except what you bring with you. It was older too, leaning headstones and gravel lanes and also trees hanging over the back fence. I had a real flashlight with me because I hated using just my phone at night, and she had the board in her backpack. We walked toward the back because she said that was where it felt better, which should tell you exactly what kind of mood she was in. And at first I was mostly annoyed. She put the board down on a flat stone ledge and started whispering questions into the dark like we were at some movie. I kept telling her to stop because it felt embarrassing more than anything. I was cold and tired and just really ready to go probably 5 minutes after we got there. Then the planchette moved, and at first I thought she was doing it herself. I told her to knock it off, and she looked at me right away, and I remember her face because all the color had gone out of it. She looked sweaty around her mouth, and her eyes were too open. She said, "I'm not doing that." Then the thing scraped hard across the board. That sound changed the whole feeling of the night for me. I stepped back, and she leaned in closer. She asked real quiet, "What do you want?" I didn't hear anything. She did. I know she did because she nodded like somebody had answered her. That was when I wanted out for real. I said her name and told her we were leaving. I reached down to grab the board and she smacked my hand away so hard it stung. And then she started talking. Not to me. Her eyes stayed on the board the whole time. She'd say a few words, she'd stop, she'd listen, and then answer again. I caught pieces of it. No, stop. I didn't bring her for that. That line hit me hard enough that I took another step back. I told her to get up, and she didn't. I said it again louder. Then she looked at me. Her mouth was hanging open a little. She looked sick, not tired and not freaked out, but sick. Her skin had that wet look people get right before they throw up. And then she smiled. I backed away from her right then, and she stood up. 1 second she was bent over the board, and the next she was on her feet with her head tilted toward me and her arms hanging loose. And then she laughed. I had heard her laugh plenty of times before that night, and that sound wasn't hers. It came out low and rough. It sounded like it was tearing its way out of her throat. I turned and started walking fast toward the path back to the car. And behind me, I heard her step off the stone. And then I heard her running. I swung the flashlight back over my shoulder for 1 second and caught her between the graves. And that picture still gets me. Her mouth was open wider now. Blood was coming out of one nostril, and her eyes had rolled up so far I could barely see anything except white. Her face looked wet, and the skin around her mouth looked stretched tight. She was coming at me, fast, enough that I stopped thinking and just ran. After that, it was a blur. Headstones flashing through the beam, gravel sliding under my shoes, and branches scraping my arms. I could hear her behind me the whole time, sometimes laughing and sometimes making this awful choking sound like she was trying to force words out and couldn't get them. At one point, I heard my name, and that almost made me trip. I made it to the car first by maybe a few seconds. I got inside and locked the doors and turned the flashlight back toward the cemetery. She hit the passenger window so hard the whole car shook. I screamed, and she stood there with both hands on the glass, staring in at me. Blood all over her face, mouth hanging open, and eyes rolled up. She looked empty and furious at the same time. And then she said in that same wrecked voice, "Let me in." I threw the car into reverse so hard I nearly hit one of the stones posts at the entrance. I got turned around and I hit the road and I drove back to the campus shaking so badly I could barely keep the wheel straight. I called her 3 times on the way back, but there was no answer. I texted and I called again from my room, and there was still nothing. The next day, nobody had heard from her. A few days later, people started saying she must have left town, dropped out or gone home, or had some kind of mental breakdown. That was the version everybody settled on because it was easier to say than anything else. I never saw her again, and I went back once in daylight with 2 other girls because I couldn't stand not knowing what was still out there. The board was near the back where we had left it, split clean in half, and carved into the wood beside it deep enough to leave pale marks was my name. I have never touched a Ouija board again, and I still think about the day she looked through that passenger window, not because I thought she needed help, but because I knew she wanted in. Anyway, good luck sleeping tonight.
I used a Ouija board one time when I was younger, and I would never do it again. This is a 100% true story that happened to me over 20 years ago. So when I was growing up, I lived in a really small town. We had a population of less than 6,000 people. The town was at the base of a mountain, and it was so small, all we had was a gas station, a couple restaurants, a post office, a scrapyard, and a one-room church that was up in the mountains. I was around 8th grade at the time, and my older sister got a Ouija board and wanted to try it out. We had always seen movies about them, and even though we didn't believe in it, we kind of wanted to see what would happen if we tried, so I went with her and one of her friends. And even though we weren't religious, we figured if there are entities attached to this board, maybe the safest place to go would be the church. So we got in her car and we drove up the mountain as the sun was going down. And the woods are always scary at nighttime, but this felt very sinister. We arrived at the church as the sun was almost fully down and there was nobody there, but it was the kind of place that was open 24 hours so you could just go in. And it was a very small one-room church. There was maybe like 5 pews. And even though there weren't people here all of the time, they would still have candles burning because people would come through, light a candle. And I think that none of us at this point even wanted to do the Ouija board because it was creepy, but we all didn't want to back out, so we decided to go through with it. So we set up the Ouija board on the floor of the church. So the 3 of us put our hands on the planchette, and I always thought it was people pushing it around or you were doing it psychosomatically, but it had this really weird feeling to it, like it was gliding. And while my sister had pranked me plenty of times in my life, I really do believe that her and her friend weren't controlling it. Like I said, it had this weird quality where it was really gliding around the board. So we asked to speak to something there. And while we were there using this Ouija board, we spoke to multiple things that night, but I only remember 2 of the entities or whatever they were that we talked to. One of them was a young boy who said that he had passed away violently in the woods. And when we tried to ask it what the time period was, it seemed to be a couple hundred years before, and that this boy and his family were pioneers in the area. And it was odd because it almost felt like talking on a phone to where other people can just pick up the phone, so suddenly we'd be speaking to somebody else. And the longer we were doing this, the creepier it felt, especially being out in the woods. And then after the boy came forward, we started speaking to what seemed like an old woman. And I don't remember what the story was behind this old woman or what she told us. But we took a break from doing this and stepped outside to get some fresh air, and we were all talking and realized that all of us thought that the things were lying to us, and we couldn't explain how. It was just a feeling. And that maybe it was telling us that it was a boy, or telling us that it was an old woman, so we would lower our guard. And we all just had this really strange and ominous feeling about it. But the 3 of us realized at this point that any one of us could be messing with the other 2 and we wouldn't really know. So we decided to ask it for proof. And so we went over and we counted how many candles were lit. And it was something like 7 candles were lit at the time. So we went back to the Ouija board and we told it, blow out some of the candles to prove that you're real. And when we went back over and counted, more of them were lit, almost twice as many. Well, that scared us so bad we didn't want to be there anymore. We immediately grabbed our stuff, rushed to the car, and left the mountain. But I'll never forget that because it was just that terrifying. Because somebody could definitely manipulate the board and make it spell out things or answer questions. But we were in a tiny little church and it was only us in there, and where we were sitting we had full view of everything. There was no way somebody could have gone and lit those candles without us seeing. So unless we had carbon monoxide poisoning and were out of our minds, I don't know how to explain this. And it still freaks me out to this day. I don't know what the things were that we talked to, but it's something that I can't explain. I don't know how those candles got lit, and I probably never will, but one thing I know for certain, I'll never use a Ouija board again, and I won't recommend anyone else to. I just don't know what's on the other side of those things. And I just don't think the risk is worth the reward.